And that's with the case already in closing arguments. Nevertheless, the Federal Public Defender's Office is there acting as his defense. And now he said he's going to be an alternate. They said they will inform. That's tomorrow. Alternate from the President of the Legislative Assembly of the State of São Paulo State Representative, who will run for senator and will put Eduardo Bolsonaro as his alternate. Obviously, if he wins, he will take a leave of absence to take up a government position. And the one who will take the Senate seat will be Eduardo Bolsonaro. Oh my, I keep wondering where these people think they're going. Or even where they think they are. I explained that in detail during the 12:30 p.m. live stream yesterday, didn't I? Yes, I even believe that the TSC will let that happen. I even believe it, especially with the current makeup of the Superior Electoral Court, right? Where President Nunes Marquez and Vice President Andre Mendonça, both Bolsonaro's supporters. The Superior Electoral Court might even let this happen. But I explained to you in detail yesterday that the Federal Supreme Court, if it lets it happen, will only do so to overturn it later. And the Liberal Party will lose the Senate seat, the senator's seat there in the Senate. But most likely, the Supreme Court won't even let that happen. As I told you, Eduardo Bolsonaro is a defendant. It's already at closing arguments. And if he is convicted and the conviction becomes final, he will be ineligible. As a consequence, he cannot be a candidate. And if he is, and before the certification and taking office, especially since he is an alternate, right? Before that, everything falls apart. And the Liberal Party even loses its seat in the Senate, even though he was elected senator. So Eduardo Bolsonaro, he thinks he's going to be a federal senator even after everything he's done. Attacking our sovereignty, attacking the presidency, attacking the federal Supreme Court, trying in every way to put the United States government on a collision course with our nation, with our territory, with our jurisdiction, with our homeland. Does he really think he's going to become a federal senator? He won't. He won't. Especially because he's so spineless. But he's so spineless that he doesn't even have the courage to vote to actually run for office for real. So he won't do it. Now he's going to announce that he will. He's going to make that same boast again. Then later, when everything falls apart, which he won't be, you can write that down. Eduardo Bolsonaro, never a senator. Then when the full reality hits, because they are out of touch with reality, they live in a parallel reality, completely out of it, unhinged. Then when reality hits, he'll say again, oh, I'm being persecuted, oh, whatever. Oh, I'm a victim of political persecution. I'm here because I'm fighting against the dictatorship in Brazil. Oh, the communism in Brazil. Oh, the dictatorship of the robe. The guy keeps pulling stunt after stunt. He just keeps doing it. Then he still wants to take advantage of Brazil to keep living off the easy life because that's what he wants. He wants to be a senator to stay in the Senate for 8 more years, living off the government with parliamentary immunity. It's harder to get arrested. After everything he did? Oh, no, he won't. No. He won't. No. And then there's no point in crying. No. There's no point in saying, oh, it's persecution, Andre. He's being persecuted. Hi. No, my dear, it's just a consequence. The law of sowing is as follows. You are not required to plant anything. You decide, I'm not planting anything. But there's just one thing. If you plant, whatever you plant, you will harvest. Take Bolsonaro, for example. Bolsonaro planted coup-mongering. Bolsonaro planted hatred. Bolsonaro planted the attack on institutions. He put all of us at risk. He did. With those road blockades, with those protest camps, and that erupted on January 8th. January 8th was just the D-Day of a series of previously connected acts, organized, planned, all risky. He put us at risk. He put all of us at risk. That led up to January 8th. And now the result is the harvest. Bolsonaro is reaping what he sowed. And so is the January 8th crowd. No, I know. Many really were drawn in through religious fundamentalism, deceived, manipulated, driven, and led to the slaughterhouse like cattle. Yes, I know that. But they weren't incapable. And they went consciously, freely, and deliberately. And every action has a consequence and a proportional reaction. And that's what happened. No, I also know about the sentencing bill. The sentencing bill provides for reduced sentences for these people. Yes. Could the National Congress pass a sentencing bill, Andre? Yes, it could. The National Congress can approve lighter sentences. And here's the thing. According to the principle of criminal law, anything that benefits the defendant is retroactive. Pay attention to this move right here, okay? And it reaches all the criminals. And it benefits all the criminals who are in the same situation. Criminal law, when it is beneficial to the defendant, is retroactive. It applies retroactively to and benefits those who have already been convicted, those who are in prison, those who will be facing trial, those who are in jail. Everyone benefits. The more beneficial criminal law retroactively applies in every case and benefits every defendant. But there's a catch. The application of this law when it comes to sentence reduction is not automatic. So the law was enacted and published in the official Gazette of the Union. Now you can reduce everyone's sentence. No, it doesn't work like that. Each case is different. And there are particularities, especially in the criminal field. Anyone who believes that this law benefits them, the defendant, the convicted person, the criminal, the prisoner, the one who is on trial, the suspect, anyone will file a petition with the judiciary. In the case of the coup plotters, they will file a petition with Minister Alexander de Moraes' office, where Minister Alexander de Moraes is the one who will decide whether there will be a reduction in the sentence or not. That's how it happens. And the National Congress, I repeat, could it reduce sentences, Andrea Gonçalves? Yes, it could. Just as Lula could and did veto it, and more details. Just as the Federal Supreme Court can enforce this law or not. And everything I'm telling you is constitutional. Could the National Congress make the law on sentencing guidelines? It could. I'm not saying here that I agree or that I think it's moral. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the Constitution informs us. Could the National Congress establish lighter sentences? It could. Could Lula overturn everything and veto it? He could, as he did. Could the National Congress overturn Lula's veto? They could. And that's exactly what they did. But there's a catch. The Supreme Federal Court can enforce this law or not. And it's constitutional too. Obviously, the Bolsonaro supporters only accept the constitutional parts that please them, that serve their interests. The constitutional part that doesn't match their wishes, they'll say it's a coup, they'll say it's judicial activism, they'll say the Supreme Federal Court is communist, that the Supreme Federal Court can't do that. It can. Because here's what happens. It will become law once enacted by Davy Alcolum, President of the National Congress, and published in the official Gazette of the Union. And yes, it becomes mandatory for everyone. But the Federal Supreme Court is being called upon with a direct constitutional challenge for the analysis of this law, where the Supreme Court will decide whether this law is constitutional or not. And can the Supreme Court do that, Andre? Yes, it can. The Supreme Court can decide that this law is worthless and throw it in the trash. The Federal Supreme Court, the Supreme Court can decide that this article, this clause, or this paragraph is fine. It's valid. But this one, and this one aren't worth anything at all. And this is absolutely constitutional. Constitutional, constitutional, constitutional. Why am I clarifying this? Because later on, if the Supreme Court overturns it, the coup plotters will say, oh, it's the activist Supreme Court, it's the communist Supreme Court, it's the dictatorial Supreme Court. No, all of this is part of the democratic process. And all of this is established in our Constitution. You're not being fooled here. Here, nobody fools anybody. I'm referring to the substantive side. But before that part, there's a procedural part. I want you to get the code. Code. The procedural part is as follows. You saw that yesterday on Friday was Monday. I think it was Monday. Alexandre de Moraes denied the reduction of Deborah's sentence, who was sentenced to 14 years for the attempted coup. The moment when she took the opportunity to write with lipstick on the Statue of Justice. We know the lipstick isn't the problem. People focus on the lipstick because they lack an argument, so they only talk about the lipstick. Because the problem wasn't the lipstick. The problem, obviously, sometimes is the lack of lipstick. Oh my God. That was a good one. Really good. So what happened then? Alexandre de Moraes denied her sentence reduction. Why? Because he said the law doesn't exist yet, that the law hasn't been published yet. In fact, it has to be published in order for there to be the filing of the constitutional challenge against the law, which is what the PT will do, the REDI will do, others will do, and maybe even the Attorney General will do it, asking the Supreme Court to review the law. While the process is ongoing of the constitutional challenge or the actions, which I believe will be several, for the Supreme Court to analyze whether the sentencing law is valid or not. So within this action, the Supreme Court will decide and very likely will suspend all sentence reductions until the final analysis of the constitutionality or unconstitutionality of the law. Then all the actions here requesting sentence reductions will stop. They will be put on hold. There won't be any until the final review. From the judgment on the constitutional challenge to decide if this law is constitutional. But there's something really interesting that will be fundamental in all these procedural issues I'm explaining to you. What is it, Andrea? Where is it going? This constitutional challenge. Because it's assigned by random draw, right? It's a kind of lottery. It gets filed with the court registry. There's a random draw and it goes to a justice. Who will this constitutional challenge go to? In other words, who will be the justice assigned to the case? Who will be the justice responsible for this constitutional challenge? Who will analyze the constitutionality or unconstitutionality of the sentencing law? Unconstitutionality. If it falls, pay attention to this and get the code, please. If it lands with Andre Mendonça, Nunes Marquez, or Luis Fuchs, they will not grant a suspensive effect. For the sentence reductions. They will not suspend the law. Did you understand, my dear? Then Justice Alexandre de Moraes will analyze all the requests for sentence reduction, and Justice Alexandre de Moraes will have to decide according to the law. Now, if it is assigned to another justice of the Federal Supreme Court, he will follow the procedure that provides greater legal certainty. What does that mean? It suspends all requests for sentence reduction until the final decision of the direct constitutional challenge stating whether the law is valid or not, and if it is, where it applies. How does it apply? Who does it apply to? So I sincerely hope that it falls into the hands of someone like Flavio Dino, of someone like Alexandre de Moraes, of a Cristiano Zanin, and from the other ministers except these three. Because according to the principle of legal certainty, the right thing to do is to suspend the effects of the law until it is decided whether it is valid or not, whether it is constitutional or not. Because this brings greater legal certainty. And it reduces possible losses later on if the law is overturned. The ministers know everything I'm telling you. Now it needs to be promulgated and published in the official Gazette of the Union so that in fact these direct actions of unconstitutionality can be filed. Which PT has already said it will file, which PSOL has said it will file, and which REDE has also said it will file. And I wouldn't even be surprised if the Attorney General's office itself also petitions the Supreme Federal Court. Because of the unconstitutionality, at least of part of the sentencing law. And as I've already explained to you, there is some flexibility when it comes to reducing sentences. At least according to my legal understanding. But only for those people who acted under a mob mentality, under crowd influence. For the other convicted individuals who acted in a cold and calculated manner, there is no room for a reduced sentence. And the Supreme Court can even decide in that direction. And I believe that would be the fair decision. Those who acted under a mob mentality, under crowd influence, the people from January 8th who, whether we like it or not, we know that many were manipulated, will have access to a reduced sentence. But those who acted coldly behind the scenes in the shadows of the coup attempt, Bolsonaro and all the groups, will not have access to sentencing reduction or a lighter sentence. The Supreme Court can even decide in this way. Do you understand, my dear? So to sum up, everything is in the hands of the Federal Supreme Court. They will be the ones to decide whether this law is valid or not. And this is constitutional. Just as the Supreme Court is constitutional, as I told you, Congress reducing sentences is constitutional. It's provided for in our Constitution. Just as Lula's veto is constitutional, so is the overturning of Lula's veto. It's also constitutional for the Federal Supreme Court to analyze whether a law is valid or not, which is actually one of the Federal Supreme Court's core original powers, and no one can take that away. Everything is in the hands of the Supreme Court. I know one thing. I know that the sentence under the law on the execution of criminal sentences has a very important function, which is rehabilitation. Because a good criminal isn't a dead criminal. That doesn't exist. A good criminal is a rehabilitated criminal. But for there to be rehabilitation, it requires the punitive aspect of the sentence. Otherwise, he'll never get to change. And the prison system changes a lot of people. A lot of people who enter the prison system never commit crimes again. They realize they no longer want to return to that environment. Now, when a group commits a crime, and such a serious crime against democracy, and goes unpunished, you can expect another coup. A new coup attempt will happen if there is impunity, or the feeling of impunity for these coup plotters. A good criminal is a rehabilitated criminal. And for this rehabilitation to happen, they need to serve their sentence. Just something to think about and change their life. If not, nothing changes. So this situation is very concerning. And the feeling that is conveyed to the population, a feeling of impunity, a feeling that anything goes, that crime is worth it. And that's very serious and very concerning. But the saddest thing in this whole story is when we look at our National Congress and realize that many of those who are there, representatives, senators, earning almost 50,000 reais a month, they represent a danger to democracy itself. And instead of trying to create public policies that actually and truly penalize the incarcerated so that they can be rehabilitated, they try to forgive, to grant amnesty, to calculate sentences for criminals. While they shout, the only good criminal is a dead criminal, gunshots, beatings, and bombs. But in reality, they cover up for criminals. They might even be the criminals themselves. That's the saddest part of our National Congress today. It's shameful. Well, Lula will shine. Write that down. Lula will shine over in the United States. You can be sure of that. Lula will shine. And that's why the far right is so distressed about this situation. Good. Envy hurts too much, doesn't it, guys? Eduardo Bolsonaro's envy. He can't even get past the first gate. Flavio Bolsonaro's envy. He's dying to meet Donald Trump, to play politics with those people who love the United States, who are bootlickers, who salute the American flag, and he can't manage to meet them. And Lula was invited. Oh, that's a lot of envy. It's right here, look. You can die of envy. The White House confirms a meeting between Lula and Trump. The meeting confirmed by the White House is expected to address economic and security issues. Among the interests of the United States is the exploration of critical minerals in Brazil. Meanwhile, the Brazilian government intends to advance cooperation against organized crime and discuss the impacts of trade tariffs. In other words, Lula will do what needs to be done as President of the Republic. He will try to do what's best for Brazil without any servile doormat behavior, unlike the Bolsonaros and the far right. They are Donald Trump's lapdogs. That's the truth. That's why they're dying of envy. So they try to create a bunch of fake news, a bunch of situations that have no basis in reality. Because the reality is simple. Lula is the president of the republic and he's going to shine. One way or another, as I explained to you. And you, Bolsonaros, are simply being discarded every day by the Trump administration. And Lula really has to go. The United States is Brazil's third largest trading partner. It trails only Argentina and China. So he really has to go. He has to go and get what's best for us. That's how it works. With pride and with the joy of being Brazilian and not being America's doormat. Unlike the far right who are Trump's lackeys. I can't tell who's the biggest scoundrel.